Just to situate where we are today. Again, this is a 4-session for Tuesday online course. And we're now on our 3rd Tuesday. We've talked about the bigger picture, the human rights, our constitution. Then modules 2, 3, and 4. We talked about national athletes, professional athletes, and student athletes. So for today, we will talk about module 5. We'll talk about local governance and sports. And before we adjourn for our 3rd session, we will talk about partnerships in sports. And exciting also for next week because we will talk about safe sport, safe spaces, injuries in sports, intellectual property, anti-doping. So marami tayong subtopics so for next week. But before we proceed with our module 5, we will have a recap of the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th modules. But before that, every session po natin meron tayong mga takeaways. Itong first one, which is my infographic on sports with and for a purpose, that's to the upper right corner. Then 2, 3, 4 are agreements for national athletes, professional athletes, and student athletes. For module 5, we will have a takeaway of sports for a purpose ordinance kasi we're talking about local governments. And our 6th module, our takeaway will be a partnership framework to further enhance sports development and sports for all. Binanggit ko kanina, we will have a review of the 3 types of athletes. National athletes, professional athletes, and student athletes. Itong definition ng national athletes can be found in Republic Act 10699. Tells us that national athletes must be Filipino citizens, members sila ng national training pool, and they are recognized and accredited by the Philippine Olympic Committee. For professional athletes, we do not have to date a statutory definition like national athletes and student athletes. So borrowing from 3 materials, a professional athlete is one who an athlete plays sports for a living. Ito yung kanyang kinakabuhay. And therefore, he or she is paid for his or her services, and therefore he or she receives payment for performance. For student athletes, we have this definition under 10676. Currently enrolled, who wants to represent or who currently represents his or her school in inter-school athletic competitions, ating mga athletic associations. If you recall, during the 2nd module, I said that it is my position, and you may have your own position, that national athletes are not employees of the NSAs or the national federations. They are not independent contractors. It is my position, and this is the core of my proposed national athletes agreement, that they are beneficiaries. We serve them in return for bringing glory and representing our country. For professional athletes here in the Philippines, there's some debate regarding whether they are employees, independent contractors, or service providers. Just by way of an example, in the US, in a tax case, the board said that individual athletes are independent contractors, while those who belong to teams in team sports, they are employees. But again, this is the rule in the states. And for student athletes, they're none of the above. They are students entitled to some benefits and incentives. So for national athletes and student athletes, they belong to the amateur category, while professional athletes belong to the professional category. And ano yung kanilang direct relationship for national athletes? Of course, they belong to national sports associations, which in turn belong to the National Olympic Committee and or the National Paralympic Committee. For professional athletes, they belong to their immediate relationship is with their teams and the companies. Then, in turn, these teams and companies belong to leagues. And for student athletes, of course, they must be enrolled in schools. And in turn, these schools are part of 9 athletic associations as listed in our law. For governance, national athletes, we have the Philippine Sports Commission. For professional athletes and the leagues, the Games and Amusement Board. And for basic education, that's the Department of Education. And for tertiary and higher education, we have the Commission on Higher Education. What are the benefits that they are entitled to? National athletes, they receive allowances and incentives under the National Incentives Act, which is the fund is with the Philippine Sports Commission. And their NSAs can also give them benefits depending on the contract that they have, whether written or unwritten, or because of out of the generosity of the NSAs and their sponsors and benefactors. For professional athletes, we have, these are contractual. We have standard contracts wherein there is, like for example, the PBA, they have a cap on the salary for or the fees for the professional athletes. So it also depends on the league policy. And for student athletes, if you recall, we have a list and it is not exclusive. Like for example, medical insurance, reasonable allowance, tuition fee, supplies. Again, they must be reasonable and they must not amount to commercialization of the athletes. And our athletic associations, they also have their policy imposing a cap on some of these benefits. And what are the requirements for national athletes? We have this as listed in the law: Filipino citizen, recognized by the Philippine Sports Commission, accredited by the Philippine Olympic Committee. And in order for them to enjoy benefits, they must have competed in there's a list of international events. And professional athletes, depending on the league and on their contract, there could be an age requirement, an education requirement, and they must go through a draft or selection process. And for student athletes, it is required under the law that they must be enrolled in a full-time curriculum. They're eligible to represent their school in the athletic associations. And depending whether it's high school to college, there's no residency requirement. But for high school to high school, to prevent piracy, there could be a maximum 1-year residency. And for college to college, there could also be a maximum 1-year residency requirement. And in both cases, this must be imposed by the athletic association to which the school belongs to. So ito po, just wanted to give a review of sessions 2, 3, and 4. Let's now go to our session for today, the first of 2 sessions. So we have our topic now will be local governance. Previously, we talked about national athletes. We talked about the DepEd. We talked about the Philippine Sports Commission. We talked about GAB and the CHED. Now we will talk about local governments. And by the way, this is one of the subjects. This is the subject which actually I've been teaching at the Ateneo Law School and Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila for the past 29 years. So our topics for this morning about local governance will be the do's and don'ts, local government law made easy. And I have a proposed sports for a purpose ordinance, which anybody can download from from my website, and this template ordinance has been uploaded also in our platform for our online course. And towards the end of our this module 5, I will talk about some examples of local government initiatives in sports. So being true to our previous modules, we will have a quizzer self-test. And please, after we go through these statements and questions, I believe these are the more important takeaways in terms of knowledge regarding local governments. No? So again, click on the check if you agree, if it's a yes or true, and click on X if it's no, negative, or false. Okay. So let's start with statement number 1. Sports development at the local government level is a statutory, meaning there's a law, or this is a statutory mandate. Yes or no? If you recall from Module 1, when we talk about the Constitution and the human rights, the answer there is yes. It is a constitutional and fundamental right. Now, the question is this a statutory mandate? Nasa loob ba ng ating batas? Nakapaloob ba to sa ating batas na ang bawat local government unit at kailangan magkaroon ng sports development program? The answer is yes. So it is check. Sports development is at the local government level is a statutory mandate, particularly the 1991 Local Government Code. And we will go through that shortly. Statement number 2. So that's an X. That's a check. Number 2, a province cannot expropriate. What is the meaning of expropriation? Government taking private property for a public purpose upon payment of just compensation to the owner. So here, can a province can or cannot expropriate land of a private person to build a sports complex? So please click in your answer. Yes, cannot be done, or can be done. So the answer to this is a province can expropriate land to build a sports complex. One of the governmental or powers of a local government unit is to expropriate, but it must be for a public purpose. So the question you might be asking is, building a sports complex, is it for a public purpose? My answer is yes, because sports development is under the law, is in our constitution, it's a human right. It is found in the local government code, and therefore it serves the public. It serves not just the youth, but everybody, lahat ng constituents in a particular local government. So the answer to number 2, a province can expropriate. Let's go to statement number 3. A city can levy a sports for all tax. No? If you're familiar with the local government code, and for us who are responsible local government citizens, di ba? We pay business tax, no? Sa national government, we pay income tax. Di ba? Kumukuha tayo ng mga mayor's permit. No? So ang tanong is, nagbabayad din tayo ng amilyar, no? Or real property tax. So the question is, can a city levy what we call a sports for all tax? No? So the question here, especially sa ating mga kaibigan sa local government units, can a local government impose a tax not found in the law? Sports for all, wala ito sa batas. No? Wala ito sa local government code. Pero ang tanong, pwede bang ipataw ito ng local government unit? The answer is, please check in. Is it a check or an X? The answer is yes. A city can, subject to certain requirements. Number 1, if it's for the public, of course. Number 2, kailangan ordinance. Number 3, this particular tax is not being levied or collected by any other agency. And that is the case for Sports for All. There's no such tax now, and therefore, for the local government units here, no, who would want to innovate, no, and be the first in the Philippines, then your province, city, municipality can impose such a tax. So here my position is yes, subject of course to certain requirements. Number 4, can a municipality can donate land for a sports facility? If you look at number 2 is private property kukunin ng local government unit for a sports facility. Ito naman, municipality magbibigay ng lupa para sa sports facility. Check or X? Okay. The answer is check. A municipality can donate land for a sports facility. Number 5, it is optional for a mayor to organize a municipal palaro. So, ang tanong dito, optional ba siya or mandatory? Kailangan bang maglunsad ang mayor ng municipal palaro? So, the question here is, it is optional, check, or X? The answer is, it is X. Why? Because it is not optional for a mayor to organize a municipal palaro. If you look at the wording in the 1991 Local Government Code, it says there shall, meaning kailangan tong gawin every year ng ating mga mayor. Number 6, a municipality can enact a sports for a purpose ordinance. No? Ito yung aking advocacy. So the answer is, the municipality can. While it can, it cannot be forced. It cannot be compelled. It cannot be penalized for not enacting one. So because of the local autonomy of local government units, they may choose to enact one, and they have the authority to do so, or they may opt not to enact one. So a municipality can enact a sports for a purpose ordinance. Let's go to number 7. A city can enter into a joint venture with a private company for the construction and operations of a sports complex with a mall and a hotel. By the way, we will be talking about partnerships after our break. No? But for now, can a city do this? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Local governments can enter into public-private arrangements. In this case, for a bundled project. What is a bundled project? Here, it's a 3-in-1. Meron ka ng sports complex, meron ka pang mall, meron ka pang hotel. Number 8, a city can create a sports council and the position of a sports coordinator. Can a city do this? By the way, if you look at the 1991 Local Government Code, there's no such position of a sports coordinator. Wala ring sports council under our current laws. So the question here is, can a city do this, even if it is not so provided under the law? The answer is check. A city can do this in the exercise of its discretion and because of its local autonomy. Number 9, a portion of the Municipal Development Fund. No? By the way, yung merong share ang mga local governments from the collections of the BIR and the Bureau of Customs. So, and 20% of that is what we call the Local Development Fund. So here, can a portion of that fund be allotted for youth and sports development? Yes or no? The answer is yes, because it's a development fund, and therefore youth and sports is part of the overall development program of that municipality. Number 10, a governor can give incentives to national athletes. So here we are correlating this lecture with module 2 about national athletes. No? The answer is yes, of course. Kung personal funds niya, then the local council did not approve. But if it is provincial funds that will be used to give incentive to national athletes, and therefore that must be part of the provincial budget, and therefore it must be through an ordinance which must be enacted and passed by the provincial legislative council or the Sangguniang Panlalawigan. And lastly, for our quizzer for Module 5, a mayor can order the closure of a private gym. Yes or no? The answer is yes. But there are certain conditions. Let's say one, wala pala siyang mayor's permit and therefore it can be ordered closed. Assuming hindi siya nagbabayad ng tamang taxes and therefore closure is an option. But before a mayor can order or direct the closure of a private gym or any other private establishment, there must be notice and hearing, meaning there must be due process. No? As a reminder, for those of us who have businesses in our local government units, permits are privileges. No? They can be withdrawn. So we have to comply with local laws and ordinances so that our licenses and permits will not be canceled or recalled by the city mayor or the municipal mayor. So again, by the way, this is a review of local government law as it applies to sports. Okay. So I've shown this slide every module. We talked about governance. So ngayon, before we talked about the mandate of the Philippine Sports Commission, national athletes, GAB for professional sports and athletes, and for DepEd and CHED, and of course, the athletic associations, state universities and colleges, and the newly created National Academy of Sports, sila yung for the public educational system. And now we will talk about local government units. Under our constitution, there are 5 levels of local government units. Autonomous regions, while 2 are identified under the constitution right now, there's only 1 autonomous region incorporated in the Philippines, and that is the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Wala pa po tayong autonomous region in the Cordilleras. And we also have provinces and cities. By the way, there are cities which are components of provinces, and there are cities which are independent of provinces like Cebu City. We have municipalities. Almost all municipalities are components of a province, except for the municipality of Pateros. To date, Pateros is still a municipality, although there's no province to which it belongs to. And lastly, we have the barangays. The barangays under our constitution is the basic political unit, and all barangays are components of or under the supervision of cities and municipalities. So ito po ang ating structure ng ating local government in the Philippines. So it shows a vertical decentralization. So from national government, then we have provinces, cities, municipalities, then barangays. So this is questions you might, for those of us who belong to local government units, you may want to ask this, no, sa inyong mga local government units. And for us who are not employees or staff of or elective officials of local government units, ito yung because we are part of the local government structure, ito yung mga pwede nating itanong. No? Priority bang sports development? Ano bang sports program ng ating LGU? Yung ating bang LGU merong innovation sa sports? Ano ba mga local sports policies? And lastly, sino bang kapartner ng ating LGU sa pagpaunlad or pagdevelop ng ating sports program? So these are the questions you might want to ask your local government unit. So in order to understand our local government units, kasi lahat po tayo, bahagi po tayo ng local government units. So as under the Constitution and under our current laws, local governments, the five local government units, meaning autonomous region, provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays included, they all enjoy local autonomy. And again, mahalaga ang local autonomy para sa sports. So ano bang ibig sabihin ng local autonomy? Local governments must be more responsive and be more responsible. To whom? They are responsive and responsible to two principals or two bosses. They are agents of the state and they're agents of the people. And therefore, kailangan responsive at responsible ang ating mga local government units for sports development. Because sports development is a human right, it is a constitutional right and directive, as well as it is a statutory right found in our statutes. So pag hindi ginagawa ng ating mga mayor, governor, buong birokrasya ng local government ang kanilang responsibility for sports, then they could be held accountable for not performing their respective duties. Okay. When there is a conflict, let's talk about sports development. Iba ang gusto ng national government sa gusto ng local government. And assuming, let's say, there's no law which provides whether it should be national or local. How do we resolve conflicts between national and local? The answer to that is when we resolve conflicts, we must follow the law. Okay? So maliwanag yun. Let's say national versus local, sinong mananalo? Depends on the law. What if there is no law which provides for the resolution of that conflict? Then, if it's a local concern, then the local government must prevail over national government. And this is true for sports development. So look at bullet number 2. Local governments are in a better position to address local concerns, assuming there is no law which says national must prevail. Okay? Number 3, local governments must deliver devolved services. No? Mamaya po, papaliwanag ko at magbibigay ako ng example. What are the devolved services when we talk about sports? Because when we talk about these devolved services, local government units must deliver these devolved services. Hindi siya pwedeng, ayoko. A mayor or a governor, a local government unit, even a barangay, has no authority to refuse the devolved services. Devolved services must be delivered by local government units. At mamaya po, I'll give an example of devolved services when we talk about sports. Local autonomy means ang kapangyarihan ng local government units are malawak. No? Hindi ibig sabihin malawak, walang hangganan. No? So just connecting it with another, local autonomy does not mean that local government units, while they may have broad powers, it doesn't mean that they have unlimited powers. And more importantly, for local autonomy, yung tinatawag nating fiscal autonomy. For a local government to perform its multifarious functions, including sports development, it must have funds. And it must have the freedom to use their funds. And of course, dapat walang nalalabag na batas. No? Ito yung example ko kanina about the sports for all tax. No? Imposing that tax would be in furtherance of or pagpapalawak ng tinatawag nating local autonomy at fiscal autonomy dahil para sa sports. No? So local governments, while they may have local autonomy and broad authority and fiscal authority, their powers are not unlimited. They are limited by law. They cannot violate the law. No? And Local autonomy does not mean lahat ng kapangyarihan ay nasa local governments na. No? As we know and as we have studied in the past, there are powers which belong to the GAB, Philippine Sports Commission, CHED, and DepEd. And those powers, if not given to local government units by law, remain with these agencies. So let me give an example. Can a city issue a license for a basketball player in order for that basketball player to play in the PBA? The answer is no, because it is GAB which issues that permit. Of course, as a resident or a taxpayer of that local government unit, then magbabayad siya, of course, ng ibang taxes under the local government code, like real property tax, kung meron siyang business tax, kung meron, or business permit. But in order for him and her to practice as a professional athlete, ang isa lang ang ahensyang pwede mag-issue ng kanyang permit or license, and that will be the Games and Amusement Board. Local governments, because their needs are different from another local government unit, and therefore they must be innovative. Local autonomy does not mean cut and paste. Kung ano lang yung nasa batas, yun ang gagawin. They are called to become innovative because they are responsive. They are called and challenged to be more responsive and responsible. And lastly, even barangays have local autonomy. So it does not mean that only provinces, cities, municipalities, and BARM have local autonomy, including barangays have local autonomy. Okay, devolution. Earlier, I mentioned that devolution is mandatory. What does that mean? Kailangan gawin. Pag hindi ginawa ni mayor o ni punong barangay o ni governor o these local government units can be held liable for, let's say, dereliction of duty or non-performance of their mandate given to them by law. So for barangays, it is a devolved function na dapat bawat barangay ay merong sports center. Hindi to optional, as again, I've underscored, every barangay must have a sports center. Number 2, every municipality must have its own sports facility and equipment and must provide for youth development, family development, women's welfare, and welfare for the elderly and disabled. Again, this can be done through sports. And for our cities, lahat ng binigay sa munisipyo, like sports facilities, at kailangan gawin ng bawat lungsod. So let me say this again. When we talk about devolved services, the local government units here, the barangays, the municipalities, and the cities have no option but to have at the minimum sports center in every barangay, in every city, and in every municipality. Another directive under the local government code for provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangay. The punong barangay, the mayor of the city, the mayor of the municipality, and the governor of province must, again, this is mandatory, hindi to optional, legal mandate ito, must conduct annual competitions, annual games. And under the charter of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Mindanao, they are also encouraged to conduct regional competitions. But for provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays, mayors, governors, and punong barangays are duty-bound to hold annual games. Just a snapshot of the powers of local government units. By promoting youth and sports development, they are in fact exercising police power, because police power, simply put, is the promotion, protection, and the development of the general welfare. Earlier, in our quizzer, I said, can a province expropriate, take private property, pay that owner just compensation as determined by the court, and use that property for a sports complex? The answer is yes. That is the power of eminent domain given by law to our local government units. Can a local government unit, as I mentioned earlier, levy or impose a sports for all tax, which is not in the list of taxes under the law? The answer is yes, because the list of taxes that a local government unit can impose is not finite. It is not exclusive. Okay? And can a local government unit adopt a sports for a purpose ordinance? The answer is yes, in the exercise of its local legislative power. Can a local government manage its sports complex, its public market, its public ferry system? Yes, it is a corporate power of local government units. Can local governments regulate gyms in a particular city or municipality? The answer is yes, because these are businesses. They must secure their business permits and barangay clearances from the barangays. They are mandated to deliver basic services and devolve powers like sports complexes and facilities, and conduct annual games. And as we will discuss after the break, local governments can enter into partnership arrangements with another government entity or the private sector for sports development. And again, local government units are under the supervision of the President of the Department of Interior and Local Government. A city cannot exercise its powers outside the city or outside its territory. Local governments, let's say if it enters into a partnership for sports, must respect its agreement with the other party. Like laws, they are future or prospective in character. Actions of courts, let's say for not promoting sports as directed by law, the local government unit and or the local officials may be brought to court, or an administrative case may be filed with the supervising entity. And important would be local governments, a mayor or a governor can enter into a contract, let's say with a private proponent for, let's say, sports development, and the mayor can only do so, or a governor can only do so, provided he or she is given authority by the Sangguniang Palalawigan, Sangguniang Panlunsod, or Sangguniang Bayan. Because without the authority given by the Sanggunian, then the mayor or the governor will be personally liable for that arrangement. So in order for that local government unit as a juridical party to be liable to perform the obligations and the contract, the Sanggunian must authorize the mayor or the governor to enter into such an agreement. So here, this talks about the relationship. The President has supervision over our local government units, and in the exercise of its supervisory authority through the Department of Interior and Local Government, then the President can oversee and check whether these local government units are following the law. Earlier, I gave an example that there must be annual games, there must be sports facilities, and these are directives under our law. So if, let's say, a barangay or a municipality or city do not perform these functions, then they can be disciplined, let's say by the higher local government unit, or in the case of provinces, cities, by the President himself. And ordinances can be declared illegal if there's a law which gives that agency that power. So again, the DILG cannot change the decision of local government units. They can declare it the DBM or the Department of Justice. For example, my proposal for a sports for all levy, if there's a taxpayer which does not want to pay the sports for all levy, what would be the taxpayer's remedy? the taxpayer's remedy would be to question that ordinance before the Department of Justice. So that is an option for an aggrieved taxpayer. Just to your bottom left corner of the screen, here's an example of a circular issued by the Department of Interior and Local Government regarding guidelines, and this is issued last year during this pandemic, for physical activities and sports during the pandemic. And again, this was issued pursuant to the Bayanihan Act then existing, and therefore under that Bayanihan Act, the DILG and all national government agencies can prescribe guidelines by which local government units must follow and must observe. The last, before I give you some examples of local government initiatives, I'd like to invite everyone. And again, you have a copy of this. This has been uploaded in our platform. And if not, this template, which I developed as the Sports for a Purpose ordinance that can be adopted by local government units, may be downloaded in my website for free, albertociagra.com. So what would be the policy? Why we have this proposed ordinance? Of course, to build active communities so that our citizenry can be more responsive, our local government units can be more responsive, perform the devolved functions. Again, what are the devolved functions? Annual games and sports facilities, overall physical mental health of the citizenry. As we have explained in Module 1, through sports, we can achieve any and all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Having a Sports for a Purpose ordinance encourages all residents to be active in sports and physical activities. Hopefully, through this ordinance, a local government unit can enhance not just traditional sports, but emerging or alternative sports. And one of the things that I am proposing in this ordinance is to penalize any form of sexual harassment or any form of discrimination, whether political or if an athlete has a disability or because of poverty considerations, then these may be penalized under this proposed ordinance. Another objective is to prevent youth from engaging in harmful activities and developing competitive and recreational sports, promoting partnerships, which we will discuss in Module 6, and having joint sporting events with national government, with another local government unit, or with other, or with the Philippine Sports Commission. If you recall, I showed this definition in Module 1 in Session 1. Because right now there is no law, national law, which defines sports. This is a local law, which I'm proposing. And my definition of sports would be, this is an activity involving physical exertion and skill. And again, I admit that this is not broad enough to cover the definition by the United Nations. So we must include emotional, mental, and even social skills so that individuals and teams can become better, can they develop and they compete. And again, the social skills are important. Right now, under the law, there is no sports council. Right now, under the law, there is no sports coordinator. But depending on that city, municipality, or even province, they can choose in the exercise of their local autonomy and discretion. They may choose to create a council on sports. And I have, this is my proposed composition of that council. And outlined here are the functions or the responsibilities of that council. Enable sports for a purpose, develop activities so that 50% of the constituency will become active, promote alternative and traditional sports, coordination, come out with a development plan for sports, engage employees and officials of that local government units in sports, incentives for national athletes. Again, this dovetails with our module 2. Have an incentive program, benefits for clubs, annual review, propose a tax measure such as the Sports for All tax, all public spaces to have sports facilities, engage in public events, continue education for sports. So here are some of the examples of the functions of a sports council. Here are other functions: reward best practices, promote collaboration between private and public schools in sports. And again, like any other function, local governments must have the funds. So where can a local government draw funds from, or how can they fund sports for a purpose? One, they can allot a portion of their budget for sports development. A certain portion of the special education fund can be allotted for sports. And as I earlier proposed, a sports for all tax. Right now, there's no requirement for local governments to have a sports coordinator, but under this ordinance, that position can be created. And under this template ordinance, I'm proposing a penalty or an offense for any form of sexual, political, ability-related, education-related, poverty, wealth-related, harassment, or discrimination in sports. And here, there's a graduated penalty for first, second, third, and succeeding offenses. Again, so this is a proposed template sports for all, sports for a purpose ordinance, which provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays, and even the autonomous region, the Bangsamoro, can pursue. So before we have our break, here are some examples of initiatives for sports. Recently in Valenzuela City, they inaugurated last July 12 a sports park. It has a playground, it has obstacles, it has a gym and an amphitheater. And by the way, that's a partnership between Valenzuela City and my Obstacle Sports Federation. Another initiative by my federation with the barangay, to your lower left, this is a disaster preparedness facility in my barangay, and we will attach obstacles to these 3-floor tower wherein the disaster preparedness readiness officials and employees and volunteers will be trained so that they can be better prepared to respond to disasters. The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao created the Bangsamoro Sports Commission, and our Ormoc city government, they have annual games and they have their sports academy. So this ends my lecture presentation on local governance, local government's responsibility towards sports. So I will now turn you over back to Joash for a break before we proceed with Module 6 of our Session 3. And by the way, right after our Module 6, I will be emailing to the PSI the 2 presentations for today so they can be uploaded to our portal so that you can download these materials. So Module 6 talks about partnerships. Partnerships for a purpose, like sports has a purpose. Here, we will talk about partnerships for a purpose. And what would be the purpose of these partnerships would be sports for all, or sports for a purpose, or sports for peace and development, or sports for achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So sabi ko nga in my infographic, ang sports ay hindi lang pang sports. May malalim, there's a noble purpose for sports. And hopefully, that will be one of our clear takeaways after this course, that mahalaga ang ginagawa natin para sa sports. Dahil sa sports. Okay? So for the topics for Module 6, we'll talk about partnerships in general, who are the parties, what are the projects, what are the policies, and I will give you an outline, some examples of PPP initiatives. So, but again, before that, ano naman po tayo? Self-test and quizzer. So yes or no na naman po tayo ulit. And again, we will have this will be our approach up to module 8 for next week, which is the last Tuesday. So number 1, sports development projects can only be undertaken by government. Yes or no? So the answer is no, meaning it can be. It is not correct to say that only government can undertake. So sport development projects can be undertaken by private or through partnership arrangements, which we'll explore shortly. Statement number 2, the Philippine Sports Training Center Act, RA 11214, can be pursued via a partnership arrangement. Yes or no? The answer is yes. No. Recently, the province of Bataan donated a parcel of land in Bataan, of course, and the Philippine Sports Commission was there, and the purpose of that donation was for the establishment of the Philippine Sports Training Center. So the answer here is yes, can be done. Number 3, 2 government agencies and 1 private sector proponent can develop a sports facility. Can this be done? A tripartite arrangement. 2 parties from government and 1 private sector proponent. Can this be done? Yes or no? The answer is yes, can be done. In fact, this is a partnership arrangement. And I will tell you what kind shortly. Number 4, there can be a partnership between public, meaning government, and private for land development with the following components: water supply, socialized housing, and sports facility. So this is what we call a bundled project. It's a 4-in-1. Land development, water supply, socialized housing, and sports facility. Can this be done through a partnership between government and the private sector? The answer is yes. So the answer is check. This can be done. Number 5, an athletic association like PRISAA, like UAAP, like NCAA is a form of PP partnership. The answer is yes. It is a private partnership. So an athletic association is a partnership between and amongst schools, private schools, and even public academic institutions. So let's talk about number 6. A donation is also a PP partnership. The answer is yes. A local government like number 2, Bataan, donated property. The other option is private sector donating to government. Or the other option is private donating to private. Or government donating to government, like the Philippine Sports Training Center. So these are possible, these are actually partnership arrangements. So the answer to number 6 is yes. Number 7, a private company can submit a proposal to and secure the award from a city for a sports facility without going through a bidding process. So for those of us who are in local government units or national government agencies who are familiar with bidding, let's say for goods or consultancy services or infrastructure, here the question is, can this be done? an award by a city to a private company for a sports facility without going through what we call open solicitation or bidding? The answer is yes, this can be done. This is what we call a unsolicited proposal, which will go through not bidding, but a competitive process, such as a right to match or such as a right to outbid or submitting a better proposal, depending on the relevant law in this case. So number 7, the answer is it can be done, but it has to go through a competitive process, which may not necessarily be a bidding process. Okay. So partnership is for mutual gain. It is for the benefit of both parties. And the benefit need not be cash. The benefit can be something else. Okay? So on one hand, you have resources, benefits, and value. And on the other hand, the parties can have certain obligations, can make certain contributions, and in the process can assume certain risks. So for both parties, and by the way, the arrangement can be multi-party, 3 parties, 4 parties. Here in the infographic talks about 2 parties, wherein both exchange resources. So partnership can be called as a resource exchange. So, but the main objective is of a partnership is merong kang madiderive, merong kang makukuhang benepisyo. Kasi kung wala kang makukuhang benepisyo, no, in whatever form, then why will that party enter into such an arrangement? So partnership is for mutual gain. And what are the 3 PPP arrangements? The 3 PPP arrangements are the following. 1, it's an arrangement between a private party and another private party. The other arrangement between a public party and another public party. And the other arrangement is an arrangement or a partnership between government and the private sector on the other hand. So these are the 3 possible arrangements. And PPPs are contracts. Okay? They must be reduced in writing so that the terms, the obligations are clear. So party 1 can be government or private sector. Party 2 can be government or the private sector for a particular purpose. There's a clear objective or for a particular project. So what are the sections or the paragraphs of that contract? Talks about who are the parties, what is the project, what is the arrangement. Is this a one-time arrangement? Is this a 25-year arrangement? Is this a 1-year arrangement? What are the contributions of each party? Are there a risk assumed by each party? Who manages the contract? Who operates the contract? Who sets the policies? Are there approvals needed after the contract has been signed? Can the parties amend the contract? And lastly, what are the roles of each party? So again, a PPP, whether public-public, private-private, or public-private, so that the arrangements, the obligations are clear, must be reduced in writing or in an agreement or a contract. And who are the parties when we talk about partnership arrangements for sports? Again, you've seen this familiar slide. On the part of government, here are the possible parties. Philippine Sports Commission, Games and Amusement Board, DepEd, CHED, State Universities and Colleges, NAS, and BARM, provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays. These are the parties on the public or government side. And again, this illustrates decentralization at the horizontal level and even at the vertical level up to the barangay. And all barangays can enter into partnership arrangements. So ito po ang mga partido sa sports sa gobyerno. Ito naman po, ito rin po, another slide, it talks about local government units, local government units, and some of the government-owned and controlled corporations and government instrumentalities. Currently, I chair the governing board of the Philippine Reclamation Authority. Can there be a sports facility or a physical activity facility or a gym or a basketball court or an obstacle sports facility on reclaimed land? The answer is yes. We have a policy in the PRA that there must be green spaces, and these green spaces can be used for public plazas or sports facilities. Basis Conversion and Development Authority, they are the BCDA is the public entity that made the new Clark City, which is the facility which was used for the 2019 Southeast Asian Games. That is a public-private partnership, a joint venture arrangement between BCDA and the private proponent. PAGCOR, as we all know, there's a public-public relationship arrangement between PAGCOR and the Philippine Sports Commission. Portion of PAGCOR earnings are given to the Philippine Sports Commission for sports development for our national athletes. TIEZA, another government instrumentality, Tourism Infrastructure Enterprise Zone Authority, they are not prohibited from having sports facilities in their tourism zones. We have local geographical zones. We have the Aurora Pacific Economic Zone. We have the Clark Economic Zone. And we have in Bataan, we have the FAB or the Free Port Area of Bataan. And again, these economic zones can have sports facilities. On the part of the private sector, we have the Philippine Olympic Committee. We have national sports associations. These can be private parties. We have the PhilSPADA, which acts as the Philippine Paralympic Committee. We have a recognized sports foundation, the MVP Foundation, which supports a lot of athletes and national sports associations. We have two professional leagues, the basketball and volleyball. And here, out of the 9 athletic associations, I just got the logos of the UAAP and the NCAA. So all of these are private parties, and they can enter among themselves private arrangements or with government public-private arrangements. And what are the possible projects for this partnership arrangements? We can have hard and soft projects. Hard projects would be solid waste management, sports complex, reclamation, power, water. Here are examples of hard projects. Soft projects would be socialized housing, sports development, classroom, agriculture. But the trend now is to combine this project, and we call this multi-purpose or bundled projects. There could be, earlier I gave an example, you have land development with socialized housing, with water supply, and sports facility. So that's a combination of hard, and soft components in one project. So we can have those multi-purpose or bundled projects. And policies, what will be the governing law or regulation for these types of arrangements? So if it's a public-public partnership, this is largely governed by the Government Procurement Reform Act. There's no need for bidding in this type of an arrangement, but there are certain requirements like a cost-benefit analysis. And of course, before a particular government agency can enter into a project with another government entity, that must be part of the mandate of that government agency. And again, an example of this would be the arrangement, the donation made by Bataan, which is an administrative agency, a local government unit, when it donated that parcel of land for the sports center to the Philippine Sports Commission. What will be the governing law or laws for arrangements between private and private? So let's say donations, let's say supporting athletes. So these, the governing laws for private arrangements would be the corporation code and the civil code. So what do we follow? Let's say for donations, if there are certain responsibilities or burdens, then we call this an onerous donation. And if there's no condition attached to the donation, then this can be called a gratuitous donation. And these donor-donee relationships are governed by our civil code. But when we talk about public-private arrangements, if government procures, so we have the Government Procurement Reform Act. If government enters into a joint venture arrangement, then if it's a government corporation, then it must follow as a rule the 2013 joint venture guidelines issued by the National Economic and Development Authority. But for local government units, for joint ventures by local government units, as well as, let's say, a government has a piece of land, then it will lease it out, let's say, to a private proponent for putting up a mall, a hotel, and a sports facility. Then local governments can have their own lease ordinance, whereby local governments are the lessors and private sector would be the lessee. But let me just underscore this, the third type of partnership of the three arrangements which I described earlier. So for public-private partnerships, here at the middle would be that local government unit or that government entity thinking about how can I develop, how can I implement, how can I fund a sports facility with a mall and a hotel. So option one, I will use my own funds. Option two, I will borrow money, let's say from the Land Bank or Development Bank of the Philippines. And door number two, which is in the middle of this infographic, would be pursuing a public-private partnership. And by the way, government, whether local or national or a GOCC or a government instrumentality, can combine all these three options and open the three doors. Here are the typical arrangements between government and the private sector. If you look at the icons here, it talks about, let's say, a conductor of an orchestra, like in holding a baton, that's policy setting or regulation. Building that is depicted here by a hammer or a sickle, peso sign for financing, and a cog showing the operations of that particular facility. So for a sports facility, these are the five possible options. The private sector will build, operate, and finance, and later on transfer the facility to government. So that's what we call the BOT arrangement. Or both the government and the private sector will perform the four functions together, but their share will be proportionate to their contribution. Hence, we call it a joint venture. Can a private sector, let's say an NSA or a sports cooperative, manage the sports facility, let's say of a city? The answer is yes. That is what we call a management contract, wherein the government was the one who financed the facility, constructed the facility, financed the facility, but the private sector will manage the sports facility, or let's say will manage the public market. That is what we call a management contract. Another option, let's say for sports development, would be, let's say a local government owns a piece of land. Can it lease out the piece of land so that the private sector can use that land for a sports facility, to hold public sports events, to put up a hotel, to put up a mall with a sports complex? The answer is yes. That is what we call a public land lease, where government is the lessor. So here's depending on the modality, would be the relevant law for a public-private public-private arrangement. Okay, so we will not go through this. I've discussed this briefly in my previous slides. Again, here, depending on the modality, would be the governing law. So how can, let's say, a city or the Department of Education select a private sector under a public-private partnership arrangement? One, it can go through bidding, or two, as I earlier mentioned, the government agency can accept an unsolicited proposal and go through a competitive process. And if there's, let's say, a failed bidding, then the government agency can now negotiate with that qualified private sector proponent. Here's the steps for bidding, and again, for local government officials here or private sector represented here, these are the basic steps. The terms of reference for the bidding is published. Then if you want to participate in the bidding, you are pre-qualified. Then you must submit your technical and financial proposal, and the best proposal wins. Then the contract is signed. So here's, and anybody who's eligible can participate in this bidding exercise. In one of our true or false or yes or no statements, we said that a city can accept a proposal and the city can award a project, let's say for a sports facility, without going through a bidding process here, but it has to go through a competitive process. So there are 3 stages to this process. Stage 1, a proposal is submitted and accepted. Then stage 2, there is negotiation about the proposal for that particular project. And in stage 3, challengers are allowed to submit counter proposals. And in this particular case, the one who submitted the proposal, we call that entity the original proponent, can, under, let's say, my template PPP ordinance, has the right to match o tatapatan lang niya kung meron mang qualified counter offer from a challenger. So these are the 3 stages for an unsolicited proposal. And again, if there's a private proponent here, you can submit a proposal, let's say, to a city, to a province, to the Department of Education, to CHED, to the Philippine Sports Commission, for a project under a public-private partnership arrangement. And here are some examples, and this will be my last slide for this morning under Module 6. Second to the last slide in one of the primers which I published. And again, you can download this primer on PPP for sports. Here are some of the examples. PAGCOR and the Philippine Sports Commission. Again, as we all know, PAGCOR provides for funds for the projects of the Philippine Sports Commission. UP and the NAS can collaborate for projects that will be of mutual benefit for the University of the Philippines and the National Academy for Sports. My agency, let's say, can provide for land for a sports complex for the Philippine Sports Commission. So these are public-public arrangements. Examples of private-private arrangements, the Philippine Sports Commission can collaborate with the Association for Community Sports Advocates. An NSA can partner with another NSA. The MVP Sports Foundation can support an NSA or national athletes. So these are examples of private-private partnerships. Examples of public-private partnership would be the collaboration between the Philippine Sports Commission and the Philippine Olympic Committee. And one such collaboration is the joint initiative for the Tokyo Olympics. And let us wish our athletes good health and for them to bring home the gold this time. BCDA and a private company. Earlier, I mentioned about the joint venture between the BCDA and the private company for the national, for the new Clark City, which houses, among other facilities, a sports facility. And a province can support our national sports athletes and our national athletes and national sports associations. And just to illustrate through pictures, earlier I mentioned the donation made by the provincial government of Bataan to the Philippine Sports Commission for the during the birthday of the chairman of the Philippine Sports Commission. Belated happy birthday, Chairman Ramirez, for the Philippine Sports Center. Below this infographic is the NGAC, which houses the sports facilities, swimming, track oval, and other facilities for sports. Here, the DILG issued a circular inviting local governments to submit nominations for the the search for scholars of our newly formed National Academy for Sports. Right now, there's 30 million for those who will bring home the gold, 10 million under the law from the Philippine Sports Commission, and 10 million each from the MVP Sports Foundation and from San Miguel. And this year, the Association for Community Sports Advocates was formed, composed of local officials and private officials who are promoting sports for all and sports and peace and development at the local government level. So here are some examples of public-public partnerships, private-private partnerships, and public-private partnerships for sports and development. So that ends my lecture on partnerships. I will now stop sharing so that we can now have a short break before our open forum. Joash?
All right. Maraming salamat po, Attorney Alberto C. Agra, for concluding our Module 6, 5 and 6 rather, or Module 5 in Local Governance and Sports, and Module 6, ito kakatapos lang, Partnerships in Sports. And as mentioned earlier, you can now send in your questions and reactions sa atin pong facilitators dito po sa ating chat box dahil we are now entertaining them as we proceed para po sa ating open forum in a short while. But before we do that, I just want to thank ang mga kasama po natin from our very, very first session to our second session and here to our third session. And as you know, on this coming July 27 po ang ating huling session. That would be on Module 7 and 8. So I hope we're really thankful for the warm reception from everyone, especially we are almost 500 participants here inside the Zoom. We thank you po sa inyo pong lahat dahil consistently every Tuesday kayo po ay kasama namin. And now I think that's the perfect time para i-turn on po ang inyong mga video cameras. And I think we're gonna have our photo opportunity right now as we wait for those questions and reactions to be sent in. Can I ask everyone to please turn on their video cameras? We'll be having our quick photo opportunity para po sa lahat. I think our tech is already, I think ready na sila. Can you give your best smile, everyone? We'll just grab a few photos and snapshots of this session. Ayan. Smile po tayo in 3, 2, 1. There we go. Smile lang po tayo. Please keep your smiles po dahil marami po tayo dito. And yung mga pages natin are there. Okay, a few more seconds po. All right. Last one. There you have it. Ayan. Thank you po. Thank you po sa inyo. And please don't forget po na later wala po munang aalis after our open forum. After po our open forum, we'll be sending out ang ating evaluation forms that will be located po again sa ating pong chat box. And as mentioned by our working group, you can only access ang ating pong evaluation forms here at the duration of our session. We will not give it po after the session or days after the session. Dito nyo lang po pwedeng i-fill out ang mga forms at the duration of our session. I think we are ready for our open forum. I'd like to call in again our resource speaker, Attorney Alberto C. Agra, and also to lead ang atin pong open forum for this session. I'd like to call in our moderator, Miss Arian Malyari. Hello po, Miss Arian.
Hi, Joash and Attorney Al Agra. Good morning po at good morning din dun sa mga participants natin na kasama ngayong araw. Almost 500 participants po tayo dito sa room, kaya we thank you po for spending your Tuesday with us. And with that po, syempre napaka-interesting na naman po ng modules po na diniscuss ni Attorney Al today, ang local governance and sports and partnership in sports. And with that, simulan na po natin ang ating open forum. Our first question is from PCOO PNA, Cagayan de Oro, Nef Lukzon. Good day, my question po. Governor A, ito situational to, Attorney Al. Governor A has finished his last term leaving a multi-purpose building that prioritizing athletes' welfare, where they can practice and store and manage their equipment. But when Governor B takes over, he decided the building to be leased to a separate government-owned corporation so it can generate additional income to the province, thereby displacing the athletes. Governor B also did not provide a relocation site. What are the lapses and accountability here? Are there legal remedies?
Sige, no? So thank you for that question. By the way, number one, mahirap maging gobernador or mayor, no? If you look at the 1991 Local Government Code, ang dami nilang functions, including sports. Sports is just one of many functions, and sometimes local government units must have their own priorities. Pero resource generation is one priority. Kaya siguro yun yung ginawa ni Governor B, no? Pero that does not mean na dapat maisantabi or mabaliwala ang sports. Because sports, especially for us, it is also a priority. So ang hope ko lang is even if that particular facility ay ginawa ng for lease for another government agency, sana merong programa pa rin yung province for sports, because again, sports is also a priority, an important aspect of local governance. So again, gusto ko lang i-highlight na merong devolved powers, no, annual games and facilities. These are required under the law, and therefore if requirements under the law are not delivered or not performed, then one, if it's the province, then an admin case can be filed with the Office of the President. If it's graft related, then it can be filed with the Office of the Ombudsman. And another way of ensuring accountability would be 2022. We will have our elections. Sports can be an electoral issue. So hopefully, marami tayong mga kababayan na kikilalanin ang kahalagahan ng sports.
Yes. Okay, our next question is from Ma'am Carla Beatriz Grabador of Pasig City Swimming. Question: the administrative agencies were discussed last meeting. In relation to this and today's discussion, is there or will there be a conflict if an LGU team or LGU sponsored club applies for an NSA membership?
Again, NSA membership, hindi siya local government based. It is sports based. And for you to be an NSA, kailangan meron kang international federation for that particular sport, no? But there are NSAs na merong local, ang kanilang memberships ay based on local government units or local arrangements. So, can there be an NSA, let's say for Quezon City NSA, no? I don't think pwede yun kasi ang NSA under the Philippines Olympic Committee or even in the Philippine Paralympic Committee are sports-based. Basketball, sepak takraw, obstacle sports. Hindi siya LGU or geographical ang structure ng NSAs. But local governments, mahalagang foundation for all NSAs para meron kang, hopefully kaya nga national din yung scope of these NSAs because you represent a sport in the whole country, not just in a particular city or region.
Yes. Okay, next question. Ito may suggestion, Attorney Al, si Crescencio Mejarito. I would like to suggest to include the SK organizations on their role of the barangay sports program. Kasi kanina parang hindi nyo raw po siya na-discuss.
Yes, admittedly hindi ko siya na-discuss pero definitely mahalaga ang SK sa youth development at the barangay level. So agree. Maybe when I revise my sports for a purpose ordinance, mahalagang ma-highlight ang kahalagahan ng kabataan, lalo na through Sangguniang Kabataan.
Yes.
Thank you, noted. And I will make sure gagawa ako ng primer for SK and sports.
Ayan, Sir Crescencio noted daw po. So from Jocelyn Lesol, ask lang po, yan po bang sports law for all applicable po sa mga persons with disability?
Yes, for all means no exception. Whether bata or katulad ko na nakakaedad na, kailangan pa rin ng sports. Whether abled or athletes with disability, women, whether LGBTQ+, no? Sports for all, in any form of harassment against any of these, no? For me, I kailangan maging accountable yung mga nangaharas. By the way, next week we will talk about safe spaces. We will talk about safe sports. And earlier I mentioned na for local governments, pwede tayong magkaroon ng offenses against harassment or any form of discrimination or bullying in sports. So abangan yon for next week.
Yun, abangan natin yan next week. Next question from ICA Mark Joseph Galang. How about this pandemic? Is it excuse especially to our LGU not to have an annual sports competition?
By the way, right now because of IATF regulations, pinagbabawal ang competitions, pinagbabawal ang contact sports. So nasa pandemic tayo, pero that does not mean na kailangan wala na tayong gawin sa sports. We should continue to thrive in sports. Maraming online virtual platform for sports. Right now, open na ang mga gyms depending kung anong quarantine level. But again, ingat pa rin, pero hindi ibig sabihin na may pandemic, hindi na tayo gagalaw, kikilos, at mag-organize ng events. But again, we must be mindful of these regulations, otherwise pwedeng magkaroon ng penalty for those who will violate these guidelines.
Yes. So this one from DepEd Tanawan City, Ryan Jerome Guevara Sales. Pag po ba sa local funds po ay may specific po ba na benefits or depende sa local leaders like city and provincial coaches?
Sa akin, para hindi maging personality-based ang programs at incentives, maganda magkaroon ng ordinance. Para in the ordinance, maliwanag ang programa, maliwanag ang priorities, maliwanag ang allocation. So, and that's the reason why I'm advocating that sports for a purpose ordinance so that everything will be clear. So kahit na nagbabago ang mayor or ang governor, tuloy-tuloy ang priority for sports and development.
Yes. Ito naman attorney from Maasin City, LGU, Earl Bennett Ross. Good morning. Since it's a sports law for all, do we have a memo scope and limitation of the partnership between LGU and DILG and DepEd in the times of the palaro or regional meets?
Again, nasa pandemic tayo kaya talagang halimbawa hindi natuloy yung palarong pambansa last year and this year. So pero annual palaro yun. Even local palaro, we have to follow IATF guidelines. So but again, this does not stop LGUs from having other forms of palaro. Virtual palaro, I think, is one option by which an annual palaro can still proceed.
Mhm. Tama, pandemic kasi ngayon, kaya kailangan i-consider din talaga natin.
Pero
And
kailangan mag-exercise, no?
yes. Yes. Another question from LSCA Jeremy Ditiofo. What is your take if the project of LGU for sports only caters for one sport only?
Again, it will not be illegal for a particular local government unit to prioritize certain sports. I don't think right now ilan ang NSAs natin. There are almost 100 national sports associations. I don't think there is a local government unit here na can adopt and pursue and prioritize all the 100 sports. So a prioritization is important kasi alam naman natin na ang resources ng sports, ng local governments are scarce or limited. Kaya mahalaga na kumbinsihin natin ang ating mga local officials na hopefully dumawak ang kanilang programa for sports at hindi lang isang sport but as many. But I don't think kaya yung 100 sports kasi ang daming emerging sports right now, including obstacle sports. No, sorry sa pag-plug ng aking sports, and that's the reason why we're promoting my sport. So it really depends on the local government units.
Yes. Attorney Al, merong follow-up sa Sir Jeremy, no? By means of diverse sports facilities.
I'm sorry, ano yun, Arian?
Yes, sir. Meron siyang tinatanong, sir, no? May follow-up siya dun sa dun nga po sa take nyo dun sa project, kung naka-focus lang po sa one sport lang po by means of diverse sports facilities.
Again, like for example, isang court, depending on the space, can accommodate a lot of sports.
Yes.
Basketball, volleyball, obstacles. Really depends on the space. Mas maliit ang space, mas konting sports. Let's say table tennis or chess or sepak takraw. Again, may mga spatial consideration ang sports. The bigger your land, the more sports. But hindi lahat ng local governments are that fortunate to have space. Pero at the very least, ang daming pwedeng gawin sa isang public plaza. At the minimum, it doesn't have to be sport specific, but physical fitness in nature. Just to encourage everybody to be physically active, not necessarily promoting a particular sport.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question from CSB Joseph C. How can we help other sports develop in every barangay? I see mostly mini basketball or half court in barangay. Is there ordinance to make it multi-sports for every barangay?
Again, for an ordinance, depende yan sa bawat barangay, bawat munisipyo, bawat city, bawat province. So, kanya-kanyang priorities, kanya-kanyang resources, but hopefully for us in sports, we have to sell and market our sports. And how do we do that? Sports programs, forming national athletes, mass participation, and ang daming pwedeng gawin. But everybody's not on the same page. So that is the challenge for everybody.
Yes. Next question, Attorney Al, from DepEd Mandaluyong, Sir David Euclid Isaac Yu. Since we are experiencing COVID-19 pandemic and most of the sports are suspended here in NCR, what will happen to the funds allocated for the youth and sports development? In connection to this, what are your suggestions to LGUs to utilize these funds?
Again, alam naman natin pag hindi nagamit yung funds, mapupunta sa general fund. And every year, meron tayong budget cycle, national and local level. Again, virtual events. Right now, open na yung ibang areas and hopefully pwedeng magamit for certain events. Bawal pa rin ang contact sports. But it doesn't have to be sport specific. Again, it can be physical fitness, jump rope, or any physical fitness events or virtual. Ang daming pwedeng gawin. So again, we can still thrive even during this crisis. Again, we are called to be innovative. No? Kailangan malawak. Huwag tayong magpakahon sa nakagawian. No? Kailangan tayo to think outside the box even for sports.
Yes. This one is from UPCHK Professor Kiko Diaz. For public-private partnership, can the government or the public sector sue the private partner if they fail to deliver on their promised deliverables?
Yes, like any other contract, if there's a breach of contract, any of the terms, whether it's breached by government or breached by the private sector, then the contract must provide for the remedies, either termination of the contract, extension of the contract period, payment of certain fees. So maraming ways by which breach is addressed. Pero sana nakapaloob ito sa kontrata between government and the private entity.
Yes. This one from Sir Lad Crisostomo, Attorney Al. Sa transition from one public official to another one, after winning election, can one individual oversee ang development ng sports sa isang certain locality?
One, wala tayong sports coordinator bawat local government. This is not a required position under our law. So if ever maganda nga nakapaloob sa isang ordinance which I'm proposing. Ang pinaka number one sports promoter kasi at sports developer in a local government unit is the local chief executive. Whether the governor, the mayor, or the punong barangay. Sila nga ang kailangan magpatupad ng mga sports annual competitions. It is entrusted to the governor and to the mayor. No? And by the way, as you mentioned, malapit na naman ang eleksyon. Ito yung tinatawag nating successor risk. Tuwing nag-iiba ang ating successor administration, may mga pagkakataon that the successor cancels the contracts of the predecessor. At minsan tinatamaan ng sports. Nag-iiba. Katulad ng example kanina, dati sports is a priority, ngayon ginawa ng revenue stream, which is not illegal per se, but again, nag-iiba ang priorities ng local officials. Kaya isang maganda by which successor risk is mitigated or even reduced would be through policies and ordinances na kailangan galangin ng next administration.
Yes. Ito po, attorney from Power Bounds, Ma'am Angeline Barreiro. I manage a martial arts studio which teaches taekwondo, karate, jiu-jitsu, muay thai, boxing, and music and dance to students ages 4 years old to 17 years old of age. Unfortunately, hindi kami nakakapag-conduct ng class for more than a year now. And, wait lang. And it is really sad for us business owners. Ano po yung suggestions nyo para sa amin since yung mga coaches namin nag-conduct ng sariling online training na hindi kami isinali and yun nga attorney, hindi raw sila nagbe-benefit nga doon ngayon.
Oo nga. Again, sana merong agreement na maliwanag between the facility owner and the coaches. Lahat kailangan magtrabaho ngayon, ano? And not just for sports facilities, even for other outlets. So if there is no contract which prohibits these coaches from conducting their own classes, not using yung brand of that facility, then ano yung recourse mo kung wala namang prohibition for them, no? So actually it's a challenge not just for the coaches but for the facility owners themselves. So so the facility owners themselves can conduct the classes, tap other coaches so that merong some kind of revenue sharing between the facility owners and the coaches.
Yes. Ito, Attorney Al, follow-up question from Sir Lad Crisostomo. If a swimming complex was not completed by a previous local chief executive? Can a private individual take over or buy the swimming complex for the benefit of the swimmers?
Yes, that can be a public-private arrangement. Kung bibilhin ng private sector from government, then ibang batas yun. There's a COA circular regarding public auction. Or the other option would be uupahan ni private sector or a joint venture. So maraming options by which the local government and the private sector can enter into a public-private partnership arrangement. Depending on the arrangement will be the governing law or regulation. So pwedeng bidding, pwedeng unsolicited proposal. So the private sector can submit a proposal to government kung anong possible arrangement ang gusto niyang ipanukala sa LGU.
Yes. Thank you, Attorney Al. I'm sure naliwanagan ang ating mga participants this morning.